Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we are going to do some jelly printing, we are going to do some stamping, we're going to do some spattering, we're going to do some spraying, we're going to do some dripping and inking, and we're going to make this entire batch of cards. It's so much fun. These little stamps are artist trading stamps. They're from Carabelle Studio, the stamp is anyway, and it came to me from our sponsor, topflightstamps.com. This is the little stamps that I'm using. I'm going to walk you through the steps on making these. We're going to do some printmaking. It's going to be a lot of fun, and you'll be able to dig up a lot of those supplies that have probably been gathering dust on your shelf since you had to have them and used them, or maybe that's just me. But anyway, I will help you make this fun batch of cards. Top Flight Stamps, in case you don't know, brings us beautiful stamps from around the world back to us here in the United States. So they travel the globe looking for all the good stuff, and they bring it back to us here. I'll have a coupon code in the video description for you so you can save some money and get some free shipping on your order from topflightstamps.com, and I'll link to all the products that I use so you can find them easily. So without further ado, let's grab our jelly plate and some paints and some pastels and get to work. I'm going to start by stamping this postage frame. It's a nice big size too, on some white cardstock, and then I'm going to set it aside because I'm going to cut this out with my scan and cut machine. Now, if you didn't have this stamp, you could always just, you know, trace a rectangle, and you could, you know, use postage edge scissors or decal edge scissors to cut it out. Since I'm using the scan and cut machine, and if you're going to use like postage scissors, I do recommend that you leave a little space in between so that you can get a really good border. I am going to use archival ink here. That's what I'm using because I know I'm going to be getting into some messy media, and I don't intend any of these to really get hit with a messy media, but I'd rather have it waterproof just in case. If you're going to fussy cut these with regular scissors, you could go a little bit closer. I just want to make sure that I've got plenty of space for my scan and cut to recognize everything. And I'll have a few extra in case I make a mistake or in case I want to, you know, save some for future projects. But I am planning on doing a nice big batch of either blank or thank you cards, because I have a bunch of thank you black rub-ons that I want to use up, similar to the gold ones that I used the other day. And I'm going to set this aside to dry. Look at all the stamps we fit on one sheet of cardstock. The next thing I'm going to do is make my background paper that's going to go inside all of the stamp frames. And I want to have a really interesting, colorful background. And I'm going to use one big gel plate for my main print surface. And since I have a couple, I'm going to use a small one as a palette. So there's a tip for you whenever you are jelly printing. If you have an extra one, they make wonderful palettes. You can even use them as a stamp pad. Looks like I got a little hair on that one. Hopefully it will come off. That's the danger of having cats in your studio. Sometimes you get a cat hair stuck on stuff. So what I'm going to do is use some stencils, and you can use any stencils that you like for this, and a sponge. And I'm going to start by applying some pattern onto my plain gel plate with some stencils. So you can do this with any sort of sponge. I'm just going to kind of dab it on. I'm going to do here and there because I'm going to end up with so many little kind of vignettes of pattern that I'll be using. So I just want to get these patterns around. I can switch colors. These sponges can be washed. Now you're working front to back, so whatever you put down first on your plate is what's going to show up the most. So kind of keep that in mind. Another fun thing I think would be to add some metallic powders. So I'm just going to grab, you know what? I'll grab a star stencil here. And I've got a couple of these little powders here. And I haven't used this brand before. I just got them. I am going to just grab another little sponge applicator. I'm just going to dip it in there. And I'm going to add a little bit of that powder. This is kind of like a duochrome type of powder, so it should show up a little bit different. Or one of these is. This one might just be a plain mica. I'm going to try this one too. Now you can pour a little bit out, or you know, sometimes if you tap some into the cap, you can get some that way. Oh, maybe not. Let's pick some from my sponge here. There we go. A little goes a long way, so this will be plenty to do as many stars as I want. Now don't worry about the chalk being sealed or the mica powder being sealed, because as we layer on and go over with acrylic paint at the end, it's all going to get in there. It's all going to be trapped there, and it's going to look great. I can move this around. Ooh, isn't that pretty? I can tell it's going to be pretty already. And of course, this is going to show up on front because we're doing this on this first layer. So I just think it's a really, really fun effect. Make sure you cap up that mica powder though before you get too carried away, because you don't want to spill it. These are the new Arteza mica powders. I'm kind of excited to see how they work. Okay, so maybe do a little bit more with another stencil and the Pan Pastel. This one's pretty. Maybe do this with a little bit of maybe a little bit of yellow. Get a sponge that's got some yellow on it. Actually, you know what? I think I'll do orange because I plan on using some yellow acrylic paint to kind of pick up the print, so I want to make sure that I will get, you know, some contrast there. And you'll be able to kind of like pick and choose where you're going to get your prints from. I'm going to do a little pink in there too. I think that would be nice. So really, we're going to make a full sheet of background, but you can use bits and pieces here and there. If, you know, it all doesn't end up being pleasing, you'll get little pieces that you can use. Hope that makes sense. Oh, I like that with a pink a lot. Do that a little bit more over here. This is a really pretty stencil. Can't remember who it's by though. I think maybe Echo Park. I'm not sure. I picked it up at the stamp show. I love this technique though, because it really lets you control where you're putting things, get this little bits of pattern here and there, and it's just a lot of fun. Now this technique will work on a Jelly Arts plate or a gel press printing plate. I don't know about Speedball because I don't have that one. If you're going to use a Stampendous plate, which is almost like a really big photopolymer stamp, I'll tell you you can keep using it up to this point, but I'm going to tell you a few different things as we move along, so just kind of keep that in mind. You can wash your stencil off. If you don't wash your stencil off, these powders will transfer onto your next project. So just keep that in mind. If that bothers you, then you'll not want to do that. All right, I'm going to put a little bit of this pretty aqua paint here. Any acrylic paint you want is fine. I find these plates to be very forgiving. Oops, that's a brand new bottle. I need to take the seal off. So you can use the craft paint from the craft store. And by the way, the reason my table is all like is all painty like that, so that when I'm doing a project like this, if I get any paint on my project, it won't really matter. So then what I like to do here to use this as a palette is I'll just spread this out with the brayer. I left one protective coating on the other side, just because it's fine to do that. You could stick it down on a piece of paper if it's slipping and sliding on you, or you could even stick it on a large acrylic mount if you are worried about getting, if you want to pick it up and stamp down on it later. So one thing you can do when you're doing this, you can use this kind of as a place to pick up your paint. And then I could take this little texture plate by Carabelle Studios. You could also find that at Top Flight Stamps. And I can put a really nice even layer of paint on there. I know I generally wouldn't lay my stamp on top of that to do that, but it's going to be fine. Everything I've already put down is going to be protected. That's in front. This is going to be in back. Okay? There. So we're just putting a little bit of texture down. I can stamp that off onto another piece of paper, and because this is just a rubber sheet, I could throw it in a bucket of water and not worry about anything. Like a rubber stamp with foam on it, it could damage the foam. And I thought, let's do that again with this one here. Of course, I don't want to set it on top of that wet paint. The key is letting these little layers dry in between. Now I could pick up paint like this too. I could just pick up some paint like that and stamp it down. Pick up another area, stamp it down, and just kind of hit those areas where I don't have anything on them. I could take a foam roller stamp like this, pick up some paint, and just kind of throw it here and there as well. The neat thing is you don't really know what you have until you're all done. So I think that's really a lot of fun. And now let's see, is there anything else we want to add at this point? I think at this point I'm going to let this dry, and then I will go over with some more things later. I'm going to clean off these things on some scrap paper. And when we come back, we're going to add more to this though. So do whatever you want with your leftovers. We're basically concentrating on this one print here. Okay, this is dry. Of course, the pastel would still be smudgeable, so I want to be careful on that. I wanted to stamp some of this Pretty Dahlia design a few times. I thought that would be really pretty in like a magenta color. This is primary magenta. Again, I'm going to use my my extra jelly plate here as a stamp pad, or I can use my brayer to apply color. Doesn't really matter which. This is really great if you have like, you know, you don't have 3 hours to craft. You've got like 10 minutes here, you got 10 minutes there. Working on something like this is perfect because you get to be creative and messy, and when you're done, you're going to have something that's fantastic. So I'm actually just going to use my brayer. Let's see, am I getting that much? Doesn't seem like I'm getting that much on there, but I don't think I need too much. Oh, that works out pretty well, I think. I can pick it up like that, or I can also just kind of lift it up like that and ink up my stamp that way. That works. I can stamp off on my scrap paper here. And something else I wanted to do was that I wanted to add a little bit of, I'll call pearls, because I got these last year at the stamp show. I haven't used them. I'm kind of embarrassed. And it's kind of like, there were a couple things I was really excited to get. These were one of them. Oh, you know what? I think I want to use a stencil with that. These were one of the things I wanted to get. Another thing I wanted to get was, ooh, they just kind of sparkle and sizzle, don't they? Was the Distress Oxide sprays. And I got them, but I didn't actually enjoy them. So I'm going to use those on backgrounds of the cards too, but we'll get to that in a little bit. I think I want to put some ink down on top of that. Let me just kind of roll over that a little bit. This might be a terrible mistake, I don't know. But I've done some cool things with alcohol inks through a stencil on a jelly plate, so I'm hoping this will be one of those times when it just is awesome. And let's do a little bit of this green. Oh yeah, had to have these. Had to have these! Let's hope I do something cool with them, because I don't want to, like, really don't want to ruin this print so close to the end. I think that would be kind of cool. Let me just kind of flip that over there. What happens if we just... Oh, get a little bit of a texture there. I like that green, that's real pretty. And a little bit of pink. Maybe just some splashes on their own. And I could actually, this is something I like to do while I'm working. I like to, yeah, we'll throw a few splashes on there. That'll be pretty. What I'm trying to do is go for a really bright background, because I'm going to be stamping with black. I might even do some heat embossing with black, or even with clear over the black, because I'm afraid that my ink might not seal very well on top of this, all these different medias. So I thought it'd be kind of cool. What if I lay that down on my scrap paper? What if I stamp this over it? I should get a texture, like a double texture. Let's go right there, because I don't have a lot in that spot. Oh, that's kind of cool. I wonder if I can get, let's peel that off and see if I can get, ooh, doesn't that look like it's going to be good? I don't think it would show up on that. I've got too much going on, but, ooh, that's going to look good. Now, I'm going to leave that there and let it dry, because when I peel it off, my block will be completely clean and I'll get a really cool impression. I gotta let this dry. It shouldn't take very long, and then I'll be able to go over it with like a really, really pale shade of, I think I'm just gonna do a real pale yellow. I'm gonna mix yellow and white together, and we'll do that in a couple of minutes. Okay, now it's time for the final layer, and I'm gonna mix some of this lemon yellow and some white paint together right on my, oh, let me show you this. See, when you let your plate dry on your paper, and that's what we're going to do here on this last thing. See, you get a really great detail and it cleans your plate off. So I really love that, mostly for the not having to wash my plate bit. So I'm going to put a little bit of lemon on there. Well, that's not really a little bit, but I got to have enough to cover this entire plate. I'm going to mix it with some white, and I've got some Blockout White from Blick. I actually prefer the Chromacryl Blockout White, but this was cheaper and I thought I'd give it a try. But I'm going to go back to the Chromacryl after I use that up. And I'm just going to mix this up. I actually don't have to mix it up all the way either. I could have like a little bit of a mottled effect, which would be pretty. It makes such a wonderful, wonderful palette. So you just want to be careful that you don't lift up anything you've put down. So that's why we make sure everything's dry first. And I just try to do, you've got to make sure you get everything covered. Maybe I'll just do a little bit more white on there. I just want to make sure that there's enough, because this paint is going to be the glue that sticks all of that yummy medium, all that pastel and mica powder and alcohol ink and all of that. That's what's going to stick it to our paper. And nothing's coming up on my brayer, so that's good. But I want to make sure I've got that nice and covered, because if there's an area that doesn't have this paint on it, that's not going to lift up. You know what I mean, Burn? Okay. Alright, I think we're pretty good. So now I'm going to take my fresh, clean white cardstock and lay that down on top. And I'm really going to press over it well, because I want to make sure that we get a really good bond. And this shouldn't be sliding around. You don't have like a really super thick coat, so it's going to slide around on you. It should be, you know, should be kind of grabbing really well. Okay, now I'm going to set this aside to dry, but let me just flip. Can I flip it over? Let me flip over this whole thing. And I'll remove that paper that it was sitting on just so you can get an idea. Now, of course, it's going to be a little cloudy because it's underneath, but we're looking down through from the bottom of the plate, so we get an idea here of how this is going to look when we peel it off. But for the time being, we want to let that dry completely. So I'm just going to set that aside on my bench so it can do that. In the meantime, I do want to show you really quick here. I cut out all of those postage stamps that we had stamped with my scan and cut machine. I didn't use a border. I kind of hemmed and hawed, but I decided I wanted it right on the edges like that. Cut really well. It's funny, I wanted to have like a template for figuring out where I'm going to stamp things. And the scan and cut had recognized one of these as just the inside, so I thought, oh, that's perfect. I got a template now for that. Okay, so we're going to clean up here. I'll be back with you in a second, and we're going to prepare our card bases. Okay, I have made 14 card bases here, top fold card bases by cutting a piece of regular piece of cardstock in half and then folding it in half. So you cut it in half the long way, obviously, like that, and then fold it in half, and there you go. I got some Distress Oxide sprays because they're a product that I bought last year and kind of regretted because I didn't really end up using that much. And I've got some mica powder here, which I'm going to add a little bit of water to, and some gel medium too, just to make it permanent so I don't have to worry about this rubbing off on somebody's hands after they get the card. Ooh, you know what? I might need to get some other... Oh no, it's just sealed. It's like, oh no, I haven't even used that. It's already yucky. Let's get a little bit of that in there. I might need to add a little bit more powder, but let's just see what we get when we mix those up. Oh, isn't that pretty? You want to use a big round brush if you're going to do the splattering technique that I'm going to be doing, because you need it to fall off of the, you need to be able to flick it. You need to be able to hold up a bunch of the stuff. I'm going to put a little bit more mica in there. I don't think I needed that much of the glaze, the clear gel. There we go, that's plenty. Really curious to see how these new Arteza powders do. I asked the rep if they were ethically mined, and they said they were, except for the duochrome, which are synthetic. I think this is actually one of the duochrome, because it's supposed to look, see how it's kind of like gold this way and it's kind of green that way? Isn't that cool? Alright, so I'm going to set that aside. And I'm going to grab one of my card bases, and as you see, my table is all kinds of crazy colors, and I did that so that I don't have to worry about keeping it clean and paint-free. I think I might do 2 or 3 of a couple of these colors. I don't know, I just wanted to really get some use out of these, so I'm just going to try to give it like a little bit of spray that's a little bit off-center. And then, hold still, I'm going to try. And that's going to be my background. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to try different colors. Oh, this one I got a little bit of pink on already, so I guess I'll do pink on this one. I've already shaken these up, so I'm not too worried about it. And then we'll do a few flicks of this, or one flick of, oh, I like that one. I think I need a little bit more water in my mica powder to make it a little more fluid. You could also use a toothbrush and spray it on. I don't like to make the sprays with a mica just because I find they clog. Let's try blue. I tried shaking back and forth because it's supposedly going to help them from not clogging. I was actually really surprised that these hadn't clogged because I hadn't used them since I first got them, because I wasn't that... Ooh, I like that. I wasn't that impressed with them. To be honest, I like how they're mixing together on that one. That's pretty. So if you want to have like a mica spray, but you don't want to like clog up a bottle or dedicate a bottle to it, you can just mix it up like that. Use a toothbrush to flick it on. And that will work just fine. Oh, that's a pretty color, isn't it? That's called Mode Lawn. I really love the Distress Oxide ink pads, so that's why I'm like, oh, I gotta get the sprays. I gotta get all kinds of sprays. And I did not like them nearly as well, but I think part of that is just that I never really gave it a fair shot, I don't think. Let's try this purple. Since I have so many colors in my print that I haven't pulled yet, but I remember that I put a lot of colors on it, I think any of these colors will really work. I'm just staying away from the muted colors, and I'm not using yellow just because remember we used that light yellow in the background and I don't think it would stand out and give me very much contrast. What's the other color I wanted to use was this orange. And then I'm just going to make some duplicates of the colors I just showed you. I don't need to do that on camera. That looks, actually it looks a little more yellow, but it's different than the yellow that I flicked on there, so. Okay, so I'm going to do that to the rest of my card bases. I made 14 of them because that's how many little stamps that I cut out, or that's how many stamps I think I have like 15 or something, but anyway, I'm going to do that to the rest of those bases, and then when we come back we'll see how our print came out. Alrighty, are you ready for the big reveal? Okay, let's flip it, and the thing is, I found that if you peel the plate back, and this is a technique I saw Jane Davenport do the first time I ever saw it, if you peel the plate off it, and that's why I'm using her plate because it's thinner, if you peel it back, it'll keep your paper flatter. So just kind of grab a hold of the plate and peel it back. Oh, it's very tropical looking. This is exciting. Now, if you were using the Stampendous Creative Palette instead of a jelly plate, and I don't know about any other than the Gel Press or Jelly Arts plates and the Stampendous plate. Those are the only ones I have. The Gel Press and Jelly Arts both seem to be the same. They work the same. You can let the paper dry on it. It's not going to hurt it. But the Stampendous plate, you would not want to let that fully dry because it will tear the paper, and then you'll need to soak the plate. And it's kind of a pain, but because you'll ruin your print. But if you have the Gel Press or the Jelly Arts, this will work just fine. Man, this is really holding tight. Now something else I'd probably do is just put on like, either I'd work right on top of this or I'd put just some matte medium on there and just pull up what's left, and that would be kind of cool looking. But look at that, isn't that gorgeous? And you get that by layering and then letting the plate dry right on it. I just think it's so cool looking. Okay, so it might be kind of tough for some of our images to stand up on this, but we'll be able to like color those images. I've got some opaque acrylic paint pens that I planned on using. Now the template here, how like my skin and cut one out, cut the inside out of one of them, which was kind of weird, but it actually worked. I can actually go around and see where I would like to, where I'd like to stamp. So that's really handy. I can plan out a little bit like that. I've got a few stamps that I plan on using, and I'm going to go grab those and we will start our stamping section. Make sure this is good and dry though. Oh, something else I wanted to show you. This was the waste paper, so like when I was cleaning off my like small gel press plate here that I was using as a palette, I would kind of stamp it on here. I tested out some sprays on here. I cleaned off my stencils on here. So I do also have this that I can go from too if I find that a lot of my images are just too bold on that. So I can use both of them, which I think is really fun. I'm going to start with my scrap paper because, you know, if I make a mistake on that, it's not a big deal. I'm going to begin just by, I was going to use my template, but then I realized, you know, there's so many great spots in all of this paper that I'm just going to go and stamp. Now, I'm hoping my archival ink is going to dry on this, and that's another reason I'm using my scrap paper first. But if it doesn't, I'm just going to be using the inside square anyway, so I can test on the outside rim. If it doesn't seem like the postage frame is drying, then I'll just carefully cut on the inside and either use stays on for the rest of it, or I'll heat emboss the image that I'm going to stamp. I'm going to use some stamps by Darkroom Door that I used in a project where we used that clear crayon, the white crayon, oh shoot, and we, remember we did that resist. I'll try to remember to link that up. These stamps are so pretty. I love it because they already have kind of a little bit of a collage aspect, and then I think I can use these pens, my big collection of acrylic paint pens, to color some images in, and that way I'll get that, I can go back in and get an opaque layer, because whoa, look how is that gorgeous. I kind of want to make like a t-shirt out of that. I should do that on fabric. I don't know if I would get such a good impression, but man, those colors are so fun and happy. Now you could obviously just measure that square, the inside, and you could just trim out squares with your paper cutter, but I just feel like being very organic and very, is deliberate the right word? I just want to kind of jump in and play, and I just love this whole stamping and cutting out of shapes, so that's what I'm doing. Of course, you would save a lot more material if you just trimmed it into rectangles, but I'm going to do it this way. Oh, I think it's just kind of cool looking just like that. Okay, now we'll just have to see if this is going to dry. I'm going to cut these out so I can stamp on them, and we'll be back in a minute. The way I'm going to do this might seem a little weird. I'm going to take my stamp out because there's so many different areas on these stamps. I'm going to try to focus on one of the clearest areas. I'm going to ink it up with my archival ink, and I'm doing this because I really, if you don't want to bother heat setting or anything, you can use like stays on ink, but if you don't have that, and I actually just personally prefer an ink like archival because I just feel like I get a better impression, I'm going to put that down on top, and then I've got a scrap of paper I can actually lay down over that and rub it, hopefully not moving it, but I've got plenty of extra pieces if I do make a mistake. There, and there's my image. I'll be cutting out inside the rectangle. Then I am going to put some embossing powder over it, because even though it seemed to dry a bit with heat setting, I'm not confident that it's going to completely dry. And I'm using clear because I'm also not confident that it's not going to catch other parts. And I'm just going to, for each of the cards, I am going to do this process. And I'm just going to make up a bunch, and then the best 14 or so is what I'm going to use. If your fingers get like, if you feel like you're going to burn your hands off, don't burn your hands off. Use a clothespin to hold your paper. But that's why I left extra paper, and I didn't cut it close yet because I wanted to make sure that I had room to hang on while I was heat embossing. And you might just leave it like that, you know, trim it out, call it a day, but you also might want to do some coloring depending on how good the image is. So I'll show you the stamps I'm going to use. I've got these poppies. I'll probably do some with the different areas of each stamp, because you don't know what's going to look good until you've experimented, and this is like totally a play day type project. Love those daffodils. So any sort of collage stamp like that is going to be really fun because you're going to get a lot of new looks from it. So if you got a big background stamp with all these different little images, it's a great way to use that in a totally different way. So that's what I'm going to do for the rest of these, and we'll be back once I've got these all stamped and trimmed out. this is one of these projects that just kind of ballooned, and now I've got like all these different things cut out and drying. I've been using some of these pens. These are just acrylic paint pens. Let me show you what I did. So you saw me stamp and emboss. So I went through and I did that to all of the different the different images, and I went through and I either cut right on the lines that I had stamped when I stamped those postage stamps on the background paper first, or sometimes if there was like just like a petal or a butterfly wing or something sticking over the edge, I might like cut around that. So like right there, like I cut around a petal. I just kind of played it by ear. Some of these looked fine just as they were. Like here's one where I've got the petal kind of sticking out. I let it kind of come out of the binding box there because I thought that looked kind of cool. And I think it definitely looks cool on the butterfly wings because it's like they're going to fly off the stamp. I think that looks really cool. And then because I did heat emboss just to make sure my ink was dry, it gave me some nice barriers as far as putting ink down. It kept it from like kind of spilling out and just kept my design. Now this one looked pretty well just on its own, and it's so funny because some stamps you think are going to look fantastic are too cluttered when you stamp them down, and other ones that you think are just too cluttered, they're not going to look good, they look great. So basically what I did was I just looked at my different images, and this is a great thing to get those pens working, because if you haven't used your pens in a while and you're like, oh boy, you know, you give them a good shake, you get them used, and the next time you go to use them, they're going to be ready to go. I just love stuff like that. And it's a great way to play with colors. It's like, how would burgundy and lavender look together? And you can play with those colors, and you can color, you know, mix and whatnot. Like if I want that a little purpler, I could take my purple pen, and it's just fun. You've got so many chances to mess up, or so many chances to, you know, to practice, not really mess up, to practice and try, because remember, we stamped. We had 2 sheets after we were done our one print, because we had our one print, we had our waste print, and we had a lot of opportunity to just kind of play and see what we could make with these. And I love projects like that, because then we just gotta pick our favorite ones to go on our cards. So add any accents you want to add. You might actually save your scraps if they came out like cool little frames. You might actually have some use for that if you do like junk journaling or planning or anything like that. Those little frames might actually be handy for you. So feel free to save them and use them on other projects if you want. I'm going to let this stuff dry and clean up my mess, and then we're going to work on putting our cards together. Look, these are getting dry. Aren't they pretty? Oh, I just love it. I love a big messy project sometimes, don't you? I narrowed it down to my top 14 little images, and I am gluing those down onto the stamp blanks that we stamped and cut out at the beginning of the video. And I did originally use this this clear gel medium. I was using that as my glue, because I'd used that. I had that out for making my mica stuff permanent, but it was kind of curling and it wasn't grabbing very quickly. That's why I have clear blocks on those holding it down, so I decided to go with a permanent glue stick instead. And I'm just going to glue the rest of these down. Just make sure that you're, if you use the paint pen to do any coloring on there, make sure it's dry. Get the edges. If you did any of the little bits sticking out from the sides, make sure you glue those. You put some extra glue on those so that they won't catch on anything. And just glue all these pieces down. I really like the way the crocuses came out like that. I didn't think that one would work very well. So it's funny when you just take a little portion of a stamp design. It's so funny to see that, how, you know, how just a little section of it works, because a lot of times you end up with, you know, something that looks really cool, and you wouldn't expect it. You wouldn't expect it, and you wouldn't use it that way typically. But I think these are so adorable. They just look like little mini, like, framed works of art with a little postage frame around them. So cute. All right, now you have all these leftovers that I'll probably just, I don't know, save and maybe use on another project down the road. You know, just set them aside and maybe you'll come up with a cool idea. But that's how those look so far. And now we can see how our card bases are doing. And I think they look really nice. I love that mica splatter on there, and I don't have to worry about it rubbing off because we used that glue with it. And we're going to do some rub-ons on here. And I got my rub-on sheet. It's just like the gold ones I used the other day, but these are black. And if you've never done a rub-on before, it's really easy. All you want to do is figure out the rub-on that you want and trim it out. And usually these sheets come with a popsicle stick, and you can use a popsicle stick or you can use a bone folder. And you just want to cut out the saying that you want. And then you can figure out where you want to have it on your card. I think I'm going to try to put these down towards the bottom. And the gold ones I had were cracking quite a bit, but I think that's more of like a metallic thing. I don't think I'm going to have that issue here. Hopefully. And you just rub over it, and you can usually see them get a little bit like kind of frosted looking on top once they've transferred. So this takes a little time. We're not going to do it, but I'm just going to show you how to do one of these because it's not rocket science. You just want to be careful as you're rubbing over it. Try not to let the plastic shift too much because you could end up with a break in that rub-on transfer and end up having things not line up. Like I think this little swirl over the D is going to crack. But we have such a crazy mixed media vibe going on these cards that if our sentiment ends up being a little distressed, it'll go with it. It's going to look good. It's going to be fine. So that's another reason I wanted to use these up on a project like this. I knew they were a couple of years old and rub-ons don't last. So rather than waste them, because I just love to make thank you cards, I thought I would try to get a batch used up and then I will have these on hand. Yeah, this one is really starting to crack up here. So hopefully, yeah, hopefully we can make use of these. If not, I'm going to just grab some stamps. But yeah, that one didn't turn out too well. I'll have to be more careful next time, but there you get an idea. I did want to show you how these other colors turned out. I think they just look so pretty. Make sure you use a nice heavyweight cardstock. This was the Park Lane, I think it's called Park Lane from Joann's. I prefer the heavyweight Recollections from Michael's, but I don't have a Michael's nearby, so when I ran out, I got some at Joann's, their heavyweight stuff, but still looks awesome. I love the way that mica looks on top of that. And because it was a Distress Oxide spray, where I got like extra water from the mica, it reacted and gave me a little bit of a different tone, like a tone-on-tone look, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to play with these rub-ons. I'm hopefully going to get them to look a little bit better. I'll probably fill in with a pen. I'll show you that actually. Let me grab, I can use one of those acrylic paint pens actually. If I can find a fine tip black one. Hopefully this one's ready to go. I haven't used that one recently. So hopefully, so we can do that. We can just kind of, let's get, you know what, shake it up. I haven't used this black pen in probably, I don't know, months. Probably not since October. There we go. This is a little bit of a guide. It's not perfect. But we can kind of fill in a little bit. I think a Sharpie would have worked a little bit better. I'm feeling like this paint pen might be a little bit out of ink, but that's not too bad. I think it's fine. Alright, so get your sentiments on, whether you're stamping them, rubbing them on, and then we will put everything together. I have a couple different techniques for finishing off these cards. Of course, you can go as simple or as complex as you like to. It's completely up to you and the supplies that you have on hand. The little stamp set that has our little postage frame also has a cancellation mark, and there's also a little border if you wanted to do that on your cards. I'm not going to do the border, but I do think the cancellation mark is really cute. And so I think stamping that right around where I'm going to put down my image is cute, or you could go right over the image, but since I'm going to do some string on mine, I didn't want to do that because I thought that if I stamped over the string it might not dry and then I'd end up with like people getting black on their fingers. So this is just some quilter's thread. It's a metallic thread. I thought was really cute. And what I like to do is just put like a blob of hot glue because it takes a little bit to set, but not too long, so you know you're not waiting forever for your card to get finished. Put a little blob of hot glue there, and then I get one end in it, and then I just try to swirl it around. Now you might have to iron your string. What I did actually, because I've got my radiator on underneath my desk here, is I just kind of pulled it across the radiator to iron out the kinks from it being in its little package, but if it's on a spool you shouldn't have that issue. But just to kind of give you a heads up there, you could also use probably like a flat iron or something if you didn't, you know, that'd probably be a really easy thing. I know they make ribbon, like little irons for ribbon. Oh, I think I need to pull that out a little bit more so I'll be able to see it. And then I usually like to put a little bit of hot glue on the edges here, just to make sure that's going to stick it down. And that hot glue also gives it some dimension. So that's one way. Just be careful. It might melt your embossing powder. And you can hit this with a heat gun if you have any glue strings that you can't pull off or that are annoying. So that's a little, kind of a little bit simple. I don't know if simple is the right word, but it's a little bit softer of a look. And then another thing you can do is use a fiber, like a yarn. And this lattice yarn I thought was really pretty. It's just a like a novelty yarn. They were really popular back in the day. Well, back a few years ago when everyone was making those really funky scarves. Maybe people still are, but it seems like it was a big trend a few years ago. So I would just kind of spool up a bunch, kind of like that. Let's see how that looks before we glue it down. See, it looks like a lot when you're putting it on. Oh, if you want that postage stamp, do that. Little cancellation mark, do that first. With the yarn, it will stay in its shape a little bit better, so you can actually take some time to arrange it, and then put the glue right on your. Is that too much? I think that's all right. Then put the glue right on your postage stamp, your ATStamp, which I think stands for Artist Trading Stamps, but I'm not 100% sure. And I think that's really cute. And then to finish it off, I really like just little enamel dots. I mean, sequins would be really pretty, but I have a hard time getting sequins to stick on things. So I'm just going to go with these little dots and either use like clear or black or white or glitter or something like that. That's really, really simple. We can put some black ones on here. Actually, where's the one we just did? We just did this one. We could do some black ones on here just so you can see. Oops, I lost the... That's another thing you want to use up. Use up your rub-ons before they go bad like mine did, but also use up your embellishments like rhinestones and enamel dots because eventually they kind of lose their sticky too. So that just gives you a couple of ways to finish it. And I'm going to finish the rest of mine and then come back and show you all of them together. So when I did the first ones of these, I totally forgot that I wanted to put that little cancellation mark in there. So I was kind of thinking about trying to see if I could get that on there and avoid the fibers. And turns out I can. And I think that really looks cool over that edge like that. And I had a few that I totally missed, so I'm going to go ahead and do those right now and then show you what we ended up with for our batch of cards. I think it's so nice when you can like get a lot of bang for your crafty buck and your crafty effort. And even though we had a little problem with our rub-ons, I chucked them. It turns out they were just cracked and they were not going to transfer well. At least I got it out of my storage. I know I'm not going to rely on having that product in the future, and it's better to get rid of things in your craft room once they've gone off rather than, you know, hoping you can revive them. So here we can take a look at these different cards. I love the addition of the fiber. It's so simple. The addition of the little dots on the ones that I did. Even the ones that didn't have dots I thought were cute. Like this one has so many nice bright spatters that I don't feel like it needed the dots. Those are nice basic embellishments I find that go with so many different things. And especially if you have like black, white, clear, glitter, things like that, you can just throw in a card just for a little extra touch. You could also use one of those liquid pearl products, but I tend to I can't use stickles or anything like that because I tend to set something in them. I always smear them. So for me, the little dots are effective. The clear ones are so, they just look like water drops and they're barely noticeable, but they do add that little bit of flair. I want to thank topflightstamps.com for sponsoring today. You can find the supplies I used there. I will link them up below so it'll be a little easier for you to find them. I love using up stuff that I've had and haven't used very much, like the distress sprays and the pearls on our printmaking. It was just a great excuse to go through and use up some of your stash. So it's fun to mix old with new, and I really enjoyed making these little artist trading stamps. I thought they were a lot of fun, and I just love tiny little things like that. I don't know why. It's just cute and fun, and I hope you give them a try soon. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and until next time, happy crafting!